Welcome once again, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a webinar on monitoring CrateDB Cloud using Prometheus and Grafana. We're excited to have you here and look forward to share valuable insights on this topic. Let's dive right into it. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Walter, and I'm thrilled to be here as part of the CrateDB Cloud team. As one of the persons responsible for operating and maintaining our production platform, I have gained valuable insights into the intricacies of monitoring CrateDB Cloud using Prometheus and Grafana. Today, I'm excited to show you how to leverage that for your CrateDB Cloud clusters. Throughout the webinar, we encourage you to ask questions. Please use the Zoom's Q&A function to submit questions. We will address them at the end of the presentation. Your engagement and curiosity are highly valued, so do not hesitate to share your thoughts and inquiries as we go along. Get ready for a journey into the world of CrateDB Cloud and monitoring. For those who are new to this topic, we will kick things off with a captivating and concise overview of CrateDB Cloud, setting the stage for what's to come. We'll quickly dive into a high-level overview of monitoring CrateDB, giving you a sneak peek into the power of effective monitoring practices. Let's start with CrateDB. In this webinar, we may have attendees who already have experience with CrateDB and others new to the topic, so allow me to take a moment to share why I am committed to CrateDB. My favorite things that I really enjoy or I really love from CrateDB is speed on ingest and complex queries. Scale up and scale out. You can add capacity on the fly. Scaling up or scaling back, depending on your demands. We have a built-in high availability system, a cluster based on a shared nothing architecture. We are very effective on compressing stored data on the disk. And one of my favorite features is that every column is indexed. So everything that you store in CrateDB has per default an index on it. And it's super easy to start and easy to use for your data-driven projects. We have multi-platform builds, open source, hybrid, or fully managed in the cloud. Give it a try, even on ARM CPUs, which work very well together with CrateDB. And we have a SQL interface. And to be more specific, we are Postgres compatible. With CrateDB, you'll have the freedom to seamlessly integrate and collaborate with a plethora of popular tools and technologies. Whether you're a fan of data visualization with Tableau, data exploration with Jupyter Notebooks, or data streaming with Apache Kafka, CrateDB effortlessly harmonizes with your preferred tools. No need to start from scratch or reinvent the wheel. The vast compatibility of CrateDB allows you to tap into your existing toolkit, maximizing your productivity and accelerating your data-driven endeavors. Now let's jump into monitoring and the different layers of monitoring that we want to introduce today in the talk. Let's start there with the CrateDB Cloud Console. On the journey to monitoring, allow me to introduce CrateDB Cloud. It's a game-changing platform that takes CrateDB to new heights of convenience and scalability. Super easy to deploy clusters, to scale clusters. We have several regions available in the console, and we take care about backups and restores. We can do upgrades for you. It's a full managed service. Whether you're a large enterprise or a small startup, CrateDB Cloud adapts to your needs, seamlessly accommodating your data growth and workload demands. We're going to start with a short overview of the CrateDB Cloud Console. It's super easy to sign up there, and I'm going to show you where that is here. So I prepared that up here already. So this is CrateDB, the CrateDB Cloud Console, showing you the classes that I already have prepared here for you. Just let me click on this one. It's going to give me a small overview or a short overview of what I'm running here. the data that I imported here, my backups, if there are any, and I can scale a cluster and to manage all the aspects of the cluster, like changing credentials, deleting protection. I can add security by allowing IP allow list, which limits access to the clusters. We do offer private links on AWS and on Azure. If you need more security there, or are under any legal stuff that needs that protection. While we are here, let's click on this cluster here. You can see that this cluster here is not doing too much here. I can open the admin UI to the cluster. Let me take the opportunity here to look into the admin UI. Okay, does not somehow work that fast here, but okay, it's open now. So admin UI, super cool tool also, which comes with every CrateDB installation out of the box. It gives me a quick overview how the cluster is doing, how many nodes I have here, which version I'm running. Yeah, and I can check the data that I have in the cluster. I have an overview over the cluster, and I can see, okay, there are 2 nodes in this cluster, and the one with the blue point here is our master node. So why not scale this cluster here? Let me show you how easy that is. Let's go here on the edit function and say, okay, I have already 2 nodes. Why not have a 3rd one? Click on save, and the agent is taking care about it. Let's not wait for it. We're going to come back for that later. In the meantime, I will show you something that you're going to need later for integrating the monitoring. Here on the settings tab, here's a quick overview of the organization. Let me point or draw your attention to the organization ID. This is a string. You do not have to remember it, but I want to make sure that you know where you can get your ID from. We're going to need that to federate the metrics. The other thing that I want to show you here is the API keys. So here I can manage all aspects of my user, my credentials, my email addresses, which organizations I'm part in. But for today, the more important thing here is the API keys. API keys allow you to authenticate programmatically against the Cloud API and against the console. We do need this to fetch the metrics, just as a short reminder here. Super easy. I already have created 2. We are limited to 2 here. I already in use of 2 of the keys, as I already set that up. Yeah, just want to make sure you find them. So one is here on your user icon, and the other one was here on the settings. The other thing that I think that I want to join to show you here is audit logs. We do log all of the actions or the steps taken in the console and to the database when classes are scaled, or when you import data, or when you change a password. Everything is logged here for your convenience to check it and look it up. I'm here on show you that we are on several regions here. We are on AKS, we are on Azure. Okay, this is the dev environment where I'm working on. But I want to draw your attention here to the Edge region feature that we have. You can bring your own Kubernetes and integrate it into the CrateDB Cloud, and use basically all the features that we have here that I'm showing you for your own Kubernetes. Let's deploy a cluster while we are here, just because we can. Yeah, so there are several clusters here with several specifications. They do differ in between CPU, RAM, and disk size and stuff. So it depends how much what you're expecting, or what you want to do with the cluster that you deploy. I'm gonna go with CR1. Why not? And use this one here and deploy the cluster. Gonna show me the credentials. I do not need them at this time. Now this one here. So I see my cluster is being deployed here, and the other one is being provisioned. Let's see. Okay, still working on it here. Yeah. And let's come back to here later. Okay, so I gave you a short overview of the CrateDB Cloud Console and showed you and gave you a fast overview of what you can do in the CrateDB Cloud. It's really exciting what you can do there and how simple it gets to spin up workloads from there. Back to monitoring and the different layers that we have. That's the topic for today, right? So let's look at the players that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes here. It's three things that we need to plug together. It's the Cloud API, which is the federation endpoint for the metrics. And we're going to work with Prometheus. Prometheus is going to be the storage for the metrics that we fetch from a Cloud API. And we're going to use Grafana. Sure, everyone is aware of Grafana, and let's create beautiful dashboards. Yeah. So let's talk about a minute here on the slide about what's important for setting up Prometheus. Because let me go back to the Cloud API for a second here. So Cloud API is basically the first layer that we need to take care of. I already showed you where you can get the API key for your user, and I showed you the organization ID. Everything else is already there. So you just need the organization ID and an API key, and you are good to go to Prometheus and connect Prometheus to the Cloud API. Target going to be the URL of the console. The metric path is an important thing here, as it is the path where the metrics are stored for your clusters. Here we have to change the organization ID, and yeah, we need the API keys. That's about it while connecting the Prometheus to Cloud API. The next step is Grafana. Super easy to start here. I decided to go for the purpose of the demo with Grafana as a with the Grafana as a Docker container. Super easy to go. I can connect to it via localhost 3000, and then I'm going to show you after that how to connect Prometheus to Grafana. And then we are already there to explore the metrics. Let's hop back to my browser and check that. Okay, this is still working here. Remember, I scaled the cluster here. It's waiting for something here. Still, yeah, okay. Just yeah, still working. Let's close this here. Okay, so I'm on Prometheus here now, and I want to show you how you connect your Prometheus, which is also running in a Docker container. You might have guessed it here from the URL here that I'm using. And let's see how connect that. There is this function here in Prometheus where you can go here and check the configuration file. And it's basically a short, concise file here. Not too much boilerplates here needed. Let me show that again here. Make it a little bit bigger. The target here, which is CrateDB Cloud. Again, I'm using dev here. Do not get confused about that. I'm pointing out the metrics path here. I showed that to you on the slide before. It's just a path on the API. Make sure you use your user your UID from your organization and not mine. And the other thing that needs to be in place is basic authentication based using the API key and user that we generated in the cloud before. That's about it here. Now let's see whether that's working. Again, let's go here to the targets in Prometheus, and looks like we have a green light here and we are connected already to CrateDB Cloud. I'm going to click on here. Don't get overwhelmed by everything that you see here, but this is actually, these are the metrics. These are the metrics that are available from the cloud. It depends on how many clusters you have. Yeah, let's see. So it seems to be it's working here, and we could actually we could already go here and check and do some look at some of the metrics. Let's look at the Create node. See, execute that here, and it's gonna show us already the metrics that we have here. For example, yeah, create node shows us some labels here. We're gonna look at that, dive into that a little bit later. Property size here and the table name, so which probably just shows us a table size here. So we have metrics available, and we could actually go here and do that in Grafana, but as I promised, we're not going to stop here. We're going to connect Prometheus in the next step. I just started Docker Grafana by running Docker, and I'm here. I already logged in, and let's go here to data sources. So the data source is basically just the first thing that we need to connect Grafana. Data source type is Prometheus. I give you the name here, and for me, as I'm working with Docker here on the machine, I'm referencing the Docker internal network here, port 1990, which points back to Prometheus. And let's see whether that works. Save and test here. It says, oh, okay, data source updated, data source seems to be working. And that's about it. How you connect the data source, Prometheus to Grafana. Super easy going. As they're both running on the same machine. The purpose of the presentation, there's no authentication sitting in between of them. Obviously, your mileage may vary on your production environment. Let's go to explore now and see what Grafana thinks about it. And remember, we have been here on this interface before, which kind of gave us already the availability to do some queries on Prometheus. Let's go back to Grafana, to the explore function, and see how that works here. So Grafana Explore, metrics browser, and I already get a fancy list of all the metrics that we have available here in this data source. And let's, for example, check again, create nodes here. It's going to tell me, okay, you have namespace here, you have pods here, properties, tables, and it's super easy to go through this and yeah, just say, let's run this query again. Use query, let's use this one here, and voila, we are able to query the various metrics here in CrateDB. A word here on the different labels that are sitting on the metrics. We are holding your clusters together in different namespaces on Kubernetes clusters in the background. So this namespace here is just a container where we hold the resources of your cluster together, and all of the containers running for your cluster are held up in individual pods. Yeah, that's just the background here. That's why you see namespace, pod names, yeah, and that stuff. The rest here is property, for example, is metric specific, as it probably makes sense to you here. You can say here, okay, let's see the number of replicas, and it has different values here, different labels here. Depends what you select from here. Let's go back here and check, for example, the create total count. Let's check one of the clusters. We see we have several clusters here. Remember, I scaled one up, which seemed to have worked now. Yeah. And say, that's it. Check one thing. Yeah. And now we can play with the metrics here. So this is a cool place to start. Gives you a nice overview of the metrics available. We have metrics available on the container level, and we also have obviously we have metrics from the crate level, where I think the most important one here at the beginning are the crate query sum of duration of milliseconds and the query total count here. Let's have a look at this one here. Yeah. And there we can go here and say, okay, we want to, for example, we want to see the select. Oh, I think, okay, this one doesn't have any data. I need to go back to that. Yeah. Okay. So very exciting to go through here, and explore is the place for you to play around here. Now let's switch gears and check into a dashboard. I did prepare a dashboard for the purpose of the webinar here, because it's a lot of, I mean, I have to admit, it's a lot of clicking around here and doing some settings. And it took me some time to create this dashboard. So I thought I'm going to share the more important things here on this dashboard here as an example how that could look at the end of the day. So one thing that I'm going to explain in a second here is that I have several data sources here. So I could have several Prometheus here to select from. And all of the clusters that I have deployed, I can select them on via drop-down here. And let's take one that has some tables, and also select. Then if I look at the tables of the individual cluster here, depending on what I choose here, yeah, and also depending how many nodes a cluster has, I can even drill down into the nodes now here. I'm going to show you that in a second. On the vertical side here, I have the overview, and I think this is how things could look at for you also. Is like I have to put this on the top here, the number of queries here, so it gives me a quick overview on how many inserts, how many selects I'm doing, the cluster is processing. It gives me the query duration, how long queries take. So if I want to know how many selects I'm running and how long they take, I just select the stuff here, right? Yeah, gives me a quick overview of the data in the table. And look into this here. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to how this works with the variables here. I think this is a cool feature and enables you to have one dashboard with showing information to various clusters that you're running. And it's, yeah, for the past here. So let's go to the settings here, dashboard settings, and go over to variables. And I think at the moment where I click on this, it all makes sense. So I have a name here. The type here is data source, and I can give it a name, and that's it. And it's going to show me the data sources that I have here. Okay. And the other thing, and that works for all of the other things. Okay, problem here with going back. For example, the tables. I have I can do a select here on the data source and say that I need that has a query here or something broke here. I probably want to fix that in a second or later. I think we're good now. And it gives me a preview on the tables. I can see already what I have back on the dashboard there. Yeah, I broke something with my dashboard here. Let me see if I can fix that. What did I do? Data source type Prometheus. Wonderful, it's back. Okay, always good if something breaks on a live webinar. Yeah, and yeah, now Grafana is happy again, and we can go back here, and also with the pods. So I can say data source. Do a query here and then extract the labels from here. Let me show you what this here does. This regex, it just filters out the name of the pod name here. So if I remove that, you see it's just all the labels that are on that metric. But I just want to have, for the purpose of the dropdown, I just want to have the pod name, so I can filter that out with the regex here. Regex always look a bit daunting at the first moment, but I think it's not super complicated here how stuff works. It's basically the same thing that you can do. Yeah, sure, you're gonna find your way around this. Another thing that I want to point out here, I showed you the variables for templating, is another thing very handy here, the shared crosshair. I'm going to show you here what it actually does. What it gives you is, you see that when I'm moving the mouse over the dashboard here on the number of queries, it moves it also moves the cursor on the other connection. So I always see same time on all of the panels and dashboards, all the queries where I see. So it's easy to compare. If I have a spike here, for example, I can immediately see on the other dashboards how that correlates. Let me show you finally how that works here in the query. So I showed you the metrics before already. I explained to you the concept of this namespace here, that we hold the resources, your resources together in a namespace. And now here with $namespace, I do reference the variable here from here. So the thing that I do select here is just replaced in the query down there. Very cool feature. Yeah, and here I have a regex here where I say I do not want to see the DDL and the undefined. I rate it for over 5 minutes, do it by query, and voila, I'm getting the number of queries per in this namespace in this cluster. And yeah, I think this is already pretty much what you get here. If you do a rate, which makes sense here on this one, yeah, it's a number of queries here. So the unit here, I think you don't have to change anything there. Let's go here to query duration, which is in seconds or in milliseconds actually. Works the same. I rate them here through. Don't worry too much about the metric there. I do have a legend here with mean and max. So I can see the average and the max of the selected time frame easily, and which gives me a quick indication what's going on in the cluster, what's average and what's outliers there. And the unit here is milliseconds, as the counters are in milliseconds. I tell Grafana, oh, this is milliseconds, and it can change that back to what we have there. Okay. Next thing, so I showed you an overview of the cluster. I think this is the most obvious things that everybody wants to be aware of on a long-term trend. How do my clusters do on average over time? Did the workload change, or do I have additional users or additional queries? And does the characteristic of these change here? Quick overview of the data here also. Number of connections, always fine to know. Without looking at all of the parameters, I think what's very interesting here is we do have a container level overview here of CPU usage. Always good for a database. CPU is always something, is always a tight resource beside the disk read and disk write. Memory usage, the obvious victims, I would say, on operating system level. Yeah, I think that doesn't need too much explanation here what I'm doing. Let's look at one of the queries here. There is one interesting thing that I wanted to show you, though, is I did some fancy label replace here to just cut down to just save here a bit of screen real estate, because I'm going to show you in a second why I did this. Let's just make this disappear and show how it originally looked like. And yeah, I personally thought like the CPU usage here with having the pod here, which is the standard name of the container, just takes a lot of real estate here. So I decided to label replace and just say 1, 2, 3. Yeah, just a small detail here on this one. The next thing, probably, yeah, let's just for showing it to you. For we have parameters showing the JVM, how it's doing on garbage collections, and always an interesting thing to look at that, how we are doing with in case of anything goes wrong. It's a very interesting thing to look into. Yeah. So from the overview, I dive totally down into Java and the OS container. Replicas, an interesting thing. Yeah. So table distribution between the nodes. And yeah, that's it. I think that's what I wanted to show you here. Let me go back to the slides then. I've been here on this one. Let's continue and see what I missed here. I showed you the explore metrics function here. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Took a bit time here. I did explain you the labels. The namespace equals the cluster here. Pod name is the CrateDB node. And depending on what metric you are looking at, it has different values here. For example, the query is insert or update, or it's a table and the table size and number of replicas, depending on what you're looking at. One thing that I do understand is probably at the moment not really 100% is the question, what is actually my cluster here? Or what's yeah, the namespace here, and how do I know which one it is? you probably figured it out from the data that you store in the cluster what you're looking at. In case this is the URL of the CloudDB, where you can have where you can look up the URL, and it's exactly the same one that you have on the metric here. You see namespace 059 and the project 059 here. Yeah, just in case. So we created we had to look at the sample dashboard. I did pre-create it. I think the time would not, we would completely run out of time if we go over and create that dashboard manually during the webinar. Yeah, so let's wrap it up again. CrateDB Cloud provides monitoring metrics. It comes built in as soon as you deploy clusters. That endpoint is ready to be federated by your Prometheus or Prometheus compatible monitoring system, and you can easily bring the monitoring data on site or into your own environment. It supports Prometheus. Grafana, of course, can handle that, and yeah, the metrics, as I mentioned, can be integrated in your existing monitoring, and best of all, that's what everybody likes, is it does not invoke any additional costs. So it's free as our CR3 cluster. Did I mention the CR3 cluster? You get the free cluster, free forever, like free as in beer. Yeah. Let's come to the Q&A. Let's see. Let me see if I have any questions. I have to scroll to that. That make me like make that a little bit bigger so I can read it. No. Can I make it bigger? All right. So there is question 1, and thank you again for asking questions here. When scaling a cluster, is there anything that needs to be configured from a user perspective? I would say no. So scaling a cluster is just like the question is, when do you scale a cluster? I would answer the question like that. So you could scale a cluster either by adding more CPU power and more RAM to the node to your nodes, which I would say is like you are scaling up. You're scaling it up and adding just more horsepower to each of the nodes. Or if you scale it, if you need more capacity and you want to spread the workload over different nodes, because you think like one of the nodes is not getting along and it needs reinforcement there to work on the to get the workload done, you scale it out. And I think that's about it. So it depends, yeah, how under which load the cluster is. I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, please let me know if I missed your question. Then question 2, can you access CrateDB directly from Grafana via storing data in CrateDB in Prometheus, of CrateDB in Prometheus? Okay, first part of the question, yes, you can access, you can make CrateDB available as a data source in Grafana. The same concept as with Prometheus. Prometheus is data source, and CrateDB can be a data source also for Postgres. I did mention Postgres compatibility that we have. It's a Postgres data source, and then you can do selects and queries from there. And why are we doing? Why are we storing the data of CrateDB in Prometheus? Because we figured like Prometheus and Grafana are just 2 super cool tools that work very good together and are very efficient and a small place for starting monitoring. So what we wanted to achieve here is we are actually giving you metrics data from your CrateDB cluster in the cloud, and you can bring it to your local monitoring. It would be a bit of a chicken and egg thingy, I think, if you store that in CrateDB. Yeah, so that's why we do that. Yeah, and Prometheus is just excellent in storing those metrics. Next question here is, how often are metrics updated on the API endpoint? I think they're updated. Don't get me wrong, I probably need to ask back one of the API engineers, but I think it's every minute or every 2 minutes. And then they are, in the meantime, they are kind of cached on the API. And we do have some kind of, or actually that's a, why do we cache it? As a mechanism of throttling the queries on the Prometheus that is sitting behind that. So we do also store the metrics on and in a Prometheus in the backend. Can I customize the labels on the metrics? We do have. That's the next question. Can I customize the metrics on the labels on the metrics? You can. We give you the labels in a certain format and especially in a certain way. I showed you the label replace function in Grafana, which allows you to change the name of the label and using for dashboarding and write there something that you like more or that makes more sense to you. That works. Next question, I'm running multiple clusters, CrateDB clusters. How can I get metrics from multiple clusters? In case that hadn't been clear from my demonstrations here, you do talk to the Cloud Console, to the API endpoint on organization levels, and it gives you all the metrics from all of your clusters in that organization. So if you have one cluster, it's from one cluster. If you have multiple clusters, it gives you the cluster from multiple, the metrics from multiple clusters. It's yeah. So we did that. We designed it like that because it gives you probably most bang of the bucks. You have one job that federates, and it gives you all the metrics over. Okay. Next question was how to validate the quality of a query and its impact by the generated metrics. Whenever we use queries, we integrate JSON. We have, with integrated JSON object, we have behaviors such as high GC impact and service unavailability. Would it be possible to validate an abnormal behavior by Grafana graphics? Actually, I think it does. It does show you. I showed you that you have access to the JVM level, because typically, as you wrote here, you have GC impact, which means global. Yeah, I'm saying global catalog, but yeah, it doesn't come into my mind now. The garbage collection, sorry, the garbage collection impact. That is something that you could spot on the JVM metrics and make it available. The metrics that I showed you here, they give you an overview, but if you know that you have problematic queries, it's probably best to look at it and explain there and see what they're doing and how that works. But GC impact you could monitor, and duration certainly goes through the roof. If that works, I think that would be covered by the dashboard. And we do use almost the same dashboard for production troubleshooting. Yeah, it's a very good point to start. There's another question here. Is it possible to perform the same monitoring on a privately hosted cluster? Question asked by Charles Eduardo, or Eduard, sorry for spelling that badly. No matter. Yes, you can do the same on premises. So the JMix exporter, which we run, which we run with together with CrateDB, exposes those metrics on a Prometheus scriptable endpoint. You could scrape that into your own Prometheus, and you would have the same results as we have here in the cloud. Probably some different labels, but yes, it would be the same. Question 8, next one here. When one should scale the cluster by adding more resources to the node, and when one should scale the cluster out by adding more nodes. I think, I mean, stupid answer. If I say, probably it's not stupid, but the answer would be it all depends. I would say. So if you're on heavy ingest work path, where you're doing a lot of ingest, a lot of inserts into the cluster, that's very CPU intensive, and that gives you probably most bang of the buck if you add more CPU to your cluster. For queries, I mean, there are queries and other queries and super complex queries, and depends how much the cluster can parallelize them. It probably makes sense to add more nodes to the cluster. And it also depends always like on the concurrency that you have. So do you have like a few very powerful processes that do write to the database, or do you have, let's say, thousands of devices writing a small set of data to the database? I would correlate that together. So a few powerful processes ingesting into the data, into the database, I would scale it up. And if you have thousands of nodes, I would keep an eye on scaling it out. Just a quick thing here. But if you have any particular question there, just contact our good people from custom engineering. So they are much more knowledgeable than me about scaling out those things and what to do in which situation. That would something that we can come back to you if you leave a name with our Zoom marketing peeps. Okay, that's about it with the questions. Thank you for all these questions. I hope I did cover that to answer questions and you're happy with that. In case, let me know. If you want to learn more about CrateDB, the obvious places where you can find that is on GitHub. Not only Crate, where you can find CrateDB resources, it's open source, I did mention that, but also the GMX exporter, which gives you the metrics from in a Prometheus compatible format. Yeah, and the CrateDB community as a vibrant place where you find where you can exchange and network with other people running on CrateDB. And yeah, please stop by on GitHub and give us a star if you fancy. That would be very, very cool. Thank you. Yeah, go there. I showed you how easy it is to go to CrateDB console to create a cluster and scale out the cluster and work with the Cloud Console. That's really an amazing tool, and it takes it to the next level. And you don't have to worry about stuff. And this 3-tier cluster, no payment involved, free forever. Plus, we give you $200 free for credits that you can spend on CrateDB. I would be very happy if you go there and try it, and I could catch your interest with my talk here. One more thing here to notice, we have an upcoming workshop on the 28th. Hands-on, a lot of things to learn about fundamental concepts and modeling data, and lots of hands-on things. It's split or sliced in 4 modules. You can go through module 1, 2, 3, 4, or you just pick the module that you're most interested in. Just make sure to reserve your seat there and save the date. We'll be happy to see you there. That's it about, yeah, thank you very much for joining us. I thank you for joining the call and having me on the call here. Thank you very much again. See you next time in the web.